Alright, today we're going to cut this log up for rafters for the timber frame. But if you don't have a good logger's tape, there's one on Bailey's that I got online. You've probably heard of it before. It's made by USA Tape, and it does pretty good if you're by yourself and you need to measure something. It has this little nail on the end that's bent so that you can put it in something and measure, and it'll hold it for you. So if you get a chance, you need to get you one of these. If you're dealing with logs a lot, it's worth its weight in gold. You don't have the tape slipping off all the time. You can put that nail in there. And this one is let's see, I think it's 50 feet. Automatic retractor. Works pretty good. Alright, so we got the log loaded up. Forgot to hit record, but usually I put the small end towards the operator, but this is the way it worked out, so it's not that big a deal. Now, what I'll do, I'll start off by cutting 1 inch off, and I'll try to use some of those for the decking. But I'll cut off 1 inch until I can get to an 8-foot piece, and then I'll start cutting my 1.5. Now, I could cut an actual 2 by 10, but I don't really need the heaviness of it because I have to pick those up. So I usually do 1.5 by 10, which what you get from Lowe's is a 9.25 by 1.5. So I do get a little extra here on the width, but I keep the thickness the same as what you would get from Lowe's. able to get that whole load with the grapple. Usually I don't get that, it falls off. But so we're gonna stack this on the trailer here, and we're gonna use these slats. If you're gonna use it within 3 days, then you don't need the slats. But if it's gonna be after 3 days, it's gonna start building up some mold on it. So you need to put these slats in here so it can dry out. So if you look, you can see how, if you can see how clean this pine is. It's not a whole lot of knots in it, and so it's going to be pretty good. Now, if you get a lot of limbs on it, sometimes even while you're loading it, it'll break. So you need to watch out for those knots and those limb holes, because it'll mess your wood up and it can be dangerous if you're trying to put up a rafter and it breaks. If you're putting some weight on it, it breaks. You know, you could fall or injure yourself. So you want to make sure, if it is a knot, there's a few knots in this, in a few of these boards. If there is a knot, make sure that it doesn't have a crack in it, or it's not a big knot, because if it is, it's going to crack out on you. Alright guys, that's what we have for today. I'll finish up edging these last few pieces and we'll cut the camera off of that so I can go ahead and get through with it. But just remember a few things. If you're going to use your wood and you've cut it on your sawmill, you got 3 days before it starts molding. 3 days. It'll start building up some mold, so put some slats under it. Number 2, make sure your wood doesn't have too many knots in it if you're using it for structural lumber. If you're using it for rafters, if you're using it for framing lumber, you need small knots, okay, but it doesn't need to have those big knots where a limb was, or it's going to break out. So if you like the content, hit like, hit subscribe. One last thing, when you're out in the wild, when you're out in the country, and you see the handiwork of God, you can see a tree, you can see acorns who fall and they reproduce, trees reproduce, the animals reproduce. The creation of God is a beautiful thing. But if you go to the mountains, if you go to the creeks, if you go to the ponds, and you see all that beauty, you watch a deer in the field, it's a beautiful thing. But I want you to remember one thing. You are God's prize. You're the prize of creation. You are what this world was created for. So remember that. God loves you, and man is the prize of creation. So when you look at the mountains and the creeks and the rivers, remember, it's the mirror that shows the prize of creation. God loves you, and He created you for His enjoyment.